Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the
Everybody
procedure,
stay calm.
everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm.
Wait.
Everybody calm down.
Hi, Ark here. Let's talk about the Blaze escalations that are coming to Dauntless real soon. But first, let's get the plug out of the way. I stream on Twitch every day, so drop me a follow, and we can dive into escalations the moment they start together. I stream every other day, and I stream mostly Dauntless, and also Heroes of the Storm. Now, in case you are new to the game and you're not entirely familiar as to what escalations are, there are a series of fights with behemoths alternating between fighting either one or two behemoths at the same time, while additional effects and modifiers are being added. After defeating about 6 behemoths, you, assuming you did so with a decent score, will face against the boss of sorts. For lightning escalations, that was the Noodle Dragon known as Malkarian. For a while now, we've been getting the Blaze escalations. Essentially, the escalations are divided by element. We had lightning escalations, which was with the Noodle Dragon, and now we're getting the Blaze escalations, which is likely going to be with an ape, but we'll get to that. Now, from what Phoenix Labs teased so far, we can see that firstly, we are getting a new type of island. It's the exotic island, and I think this might be just a little bit more than a simple recolor of the existing islands, as the Lightning Islands were mostly barren and sort of just a rock, an area for you to fight the behemoth in. This is due both to the image they shared, although that was just a singular image. We can't really deduce the look of the entire escalation sequence, but also because they mentioned the Grugruks, which will henceforth be referred to as Pumbas, whose description mentions that they are defending what they think is their territory. Now, in case you're not familiar with what the Pumbas are, they are essentially a new creature added to the game. It's not a behemoth, it's sort of something akin to the Styxian sacrifice cats. We don't know much about it just yet, but judging by the fact that they were mentioned as defending their territory, this creates two possibilities. Well, one of them, the more boring one, is that they will be just a simple modifier like the Styxian sacrifice kitties. The other one is that they will be actually roaming the island, they will be present in the island passively, which would require a significant departure from the current design of the escalation islands, because they are very, again, barren, just a flat area, half fenced with some rock, and that's about it. I mean, if that's the case, then the Pumbas will just kind of be standing there around the behemoth, and if that's the case, then, well, there is really no difference from it being a modifier and then just spawning in the middle. Now, the reason why I'm saying that they might possibly be added as a more of a persistent fauna is because that's one of the goals in their roadmap. Obviously, we can't know, but it would be certainly a good place to test how players interact with these let's call them more neutral creatures, and then if the developers like what they see, if they think that the interactions are happening as they should, then they could be transitioned to the actual hunts themselves, or the patrols, if you will. Now, the next thing that we can see on the escalation map is that we are having a couple of behemoths being modified. Notably, it's a Quillshot and Razekiri, both obviously being fire variants, given that this is a Blaze escalations. On the Quillshot image, we can see that his spikes are now set on fire, which I assume will be working in a very similar way to Embermane's Fire Spit, not the one in the line, but the one that sort of arcs and falls on the ground, creating a small patches of fire. I'm assuming that's the same with the spikes. And also in the background of that image, we can see a little lava spout, very similar to the one that actually Charog creates. Now, this could hint towards either being a move that the behemoth has. I would imagine perhaps when he slams his front paw into the ground, or it has a chance, or it always creates a fire spout. The other option here, obviously, is that this is one of the modifiers that we can run into during these escalations. Now, if that's the case, then why would you do that? Do you hate your players, Phoenix? I mean, come on, man. Isn't Hellion enough? The other, which is the Razekiri, seems to be simply adding fire effects to his abilities. This, however, raises a question, and that is how it will be handled in the form of the prisms that he traps you in. Are we going to be set on fire, whilst inside them, essentially putting us on timer to break them as quickly as possible, or some other effect like that? Because to be fair, those prisms that you get locked in are fairly boring. You just kind of break them, and in half the time the laser doesn't even hit you. It's not a very interesting move, so maybe adding some fire effects to it could be interesting. Also, it could be very, very annoying to deal with. The better question that we might be asking when we're looking at these new fire variants is, are they going to have their own armor? I think the answer to the question is yes, they will, because every creature variant in the game has its own armor set. So I would say it's highly likely we are looking to obtain 3 additional armor sets, but I think nobody expects the big bad ape at the end to not have his own armors and weapon. I am pretty confident we will get additional armor sets and we will get additional weapons. Obviously we cannot be 100% certain, but I think it's very likely that we are going to obtain such things. As to what their effects are going to be, as far as what traits they will have, I don't even dare to guess. There's really a lot of possibilities. However, assuming that there will be some consistency between the elements, Blaze element is almost always highly offensive, high damage, focused on, well, dealing damage. So I think we could see stuff like Overpower, we could see stuff like maybe even Wild Frenzy, we could see a lot of additional damage dealing traits, probably covering some of the rare ones. I mean, Overpower is not exactly rare, but I think there's only the helmet from Hellion. I'm not sure, I'm kind of fishing from my own memory. I'm pretty sure we don't have a single Wild Frenzy armor, and I don't really want to speculate too much on this. Now, before we get to the main course, which is the end boss and some discussion at the end, there is also been mentioned that we can get some sort of an airship bombardment. I'm still not sure why we're not calling those ether ships. It sounds much better in my opinion, but hey, it's just me, all right? Now, if we look at the note on the image, we see that it mentions that the price will be both rams and maneuverability. Now, the rams part actually points towards it being possibly consumable because those can be purchased for rams, and also we already have a lantern that is doing similar things, some sort of a airship bombardment. Whether or not it's going to be something entirely on its own, we can't really tell. Now, the thing that is kind of interesting to me is that the cost is also in maneuverability. Now, this could mean a lot of things, either just a nice little note, it sounded cool when they were making it, and well, it would mean that that's kind of boring, but it also could mean that perhaps a fixed increase in danger meter, or the escalations aren't exactly timed, but in case of this being available during actual patrols, you do notice that you have a little bit of a timer down there. It's about 45 minutes, I think, so possibly it could shave off some of that time, since that says it's airship fuel remaining. We'll have to see. But either way, none of these additions, of which there are quite a few, aren't as important as the big boy at the end. So let's address the ape in the room, and that is the escalation boss. From the teasers we've seen so far, we could see the big footprint picture that seemed to be referencing a Godzilla movie, along with a facial outline of features that are very reminiscent of a macaque in a different teaser. And lastly, in the announcement itself that revealed the date, we can also see a shadow of what appears to be a very ape-like figure doing something akin to a booty slam. Now, I think it's at this point safe to assume it's going to be a giant flaming ape, and almost certainly will come with its own armor and weapon. Now, this will give us the second legendary weapon to aim for, and in my opinion, given the shape and the form of the behemoth, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw things like Rage, Overpower, Wild Frenzy on the armor itself, since they are somewhat of rare traits on the rest of the armors, and they're very thematic, I think, to the ape-like behavior or shape, if you will, which will make it a great addition to the Shroud gear, or the Koshai gear if you are of the Predator persuasion. Also, the last thing before we get into the sort of a discussion where I want to talk about the Blaze bonding of the weapons and what it could mean for the meta and how it could evolve and change, or the choices that we make with our weapons. It's a little observation, but if you look at the painting of the roadmap, there are only 4 islands connected by ether vents. Now, this could be a complete random just chance. Someone in the art department didn't really count their islands properly, but this could mean that we're going to be facing a sequence of behemoths in 2 behemoths, 1 behemoth, 2 behemoths, and a boss, instead of the usual 1 behemoth, 2 behemoths, 1 behemoth, 2 behemoths. This, however, is a little bit of a stretch. We'll see how it turns out, and in the end, it doesn't really matter all that much. Now, for the discussion. So if we assume that everything is going to work the same, or more or less the same as with the lightning escalation, I think it's safe to expect that we will be able to bond a blaze weapon to the legendary weapon. Let's call it an ape weapon, right? So we're gonna be able to bond any blaze weapon to the ape weapon, making it share its effects, its traits and its special effect. Now, this, in my opinion, makes the lightning weapons almost entirely obsolete. Because of course the main value that comes from legendary weapons, in my opinion at least, are the prismatic sockets, closely followed by whatever trait you add. So I think it's again safe to assume that we will not lose the prismatic cell feature, but compared to the lightning weapons themselves, we will have a much better choices as to what kind of weapon do we bond to the ape weapon. Because the Malkarian choices simply do not stand up against the ape choices that you can make. I mean, energized, barbed, and etheric attunement. Of the three, I really only know what energized does, because that's about how much I care about both barbed and etheric attunement. Well, etheric attunement increases your lance and charge generation, and barbed, I believe, increases your wound damage, but don't quote me on that. It's not very commonly used, at least in the sort of general builds. Maybe some pike mains are using it. I don't know. I don't really play pike all that much. Energized increases the weapon gauge gain that you have. Compare that to Ether Hunter, Evasive Fury, and especially Overpower that is on fire weapons. I think we'll see very significant shift from the Malkarian weapons towards the ape weapons, as Ether Hunter increases your damage by a decent amount actually against Ether Charge Behemoths. Evasive Fury increases your attack speed when you dodge through an attack, and Overpower increases your damage significantly up to a 60% against staggered or stunned behemoths. Now if we add the additional effects this weapon bonded gain or give to the ape weapons, such as extra part damage or extra fire damage, or 7th or 8th hit respectively, the Charog weapon doesn't really have a special effect, and we compare them to what the lightning weapons have, which is extra charge gained after dodging through an attack, extra head or tail damage, or a lifesteal, which is mostly weak. The only really decent lifesteal you can get out of is the axe, which on a perfect level 3 charge heals for an okay-ish amount, but even then it's far from really giving you a significant lifesteal. So comparing these two, the only real value I can see is for either a sword or axe as far as the lightning effects go, where you get the extra charge from dodging through an attack. With an axe, this allows you to essentially fully charge yourself by doing a single axe throw that builds your meter, and then dodging through an attack and doing a single level 3 hit. Or, you don't even need to catch the axe, because you do generate about 70% of your meter by a level 3 charging after you have the bonus effect applied. And with the sword, obviously, you will have a lot more overcharges available to you, or the Ardent Cyclone if you're using that. But I don't think that really out DPSs or outvalues the additional damage that you will get, because you can't really choose to have the effect only and a different cell, or you can put different cell but a different trait on the weapon. So even if you lose, let's say, plus 3 energized, and you replace it with plus 3 overpower, you will still get a DPS increase of 30% against stunned behemoths, which is a lot. Compare that to being able to pull off one more overcharge. I don't think that's gonna be quite comparable, performance wise, although I'm sure there will be people who make this work somehow, but I don't see it as a competitor, right? I don't see it as a competition. So that's a problem of, that's one side of the coin. The other side is also, we need to remember that there will be a special move, or at least there should be a special move. I'm assuming they're not going to suddenly change the way the legendary weapons work, and this special move, in case of Malkarian, we have a movement ability which does have a quite a long of charge up. It can hit decently hard, but not super hard. Compare it to the fact that most blaze weapons and most blaze effects are heavily offense focused, along with the fact that the sort of theme of this boss is a big hulking angry ape. I think it's safe to assume that we are going to see something a lot more offensive out of the special move, which even further devalues the Malkarian weapons. making this a really no-brainer in a choice between which weapon to pursue. And I suspect we'll see a lot less lightning escalations being run in favor of the blaze escalations. Now, whether all the blaze weapons are going to replace the lightning weapons, I'm not sure. There's always, of course, the possibility that Phoenix Labs decides to do another movement ability, something along the lines of like a leap at the target. But that would be somewhat disappointing, and even if it was some movement ability that's not really catered towards doing a lot of damage, even then I can bond a Hellion weapon to my axe or whatever weapon you're using. I think that itself kind of outshines any other option. Again, aside from like a very specific build or maybe a very specific applications. We'll see how it ends up, but this, in my opinion, has the potential of really kind of ruining the economy of the weapons, if you will, where the Malkarian weapons weren't much of an upgrade as they were more of a side grade, as they allowed a lot more flexibility with your build, but the trade-off was you needed to use, in many cases, a subpar weapon, while the blaze escalation weapons, assuming they're going to work the same way, will essentially allow you to do the same, but without the trade-off of possibly a worse weapon for your build, or worse effect, or worse trade for your build. It will simply make players that arguably are very strong already, like our gear and the time it takes to kill behemoths is already fairly low. With this ability, along with that, I think this will push it even further down. But then again, we'll see how this turns out. I'm certainly looking forward to running a couple of blaze escalations. I'm certainly looking forward to the look of the armor, because God knows we do need some decent armors that aren't costumes. So far, really, only the Koshai one looks really, really good. I mean, there are some other decent choices, but they don't stand up as well, I think, compared to either the Koshai or the actual costumes that you can buy. But that's about all we know so far about the Blaze Escalations. I will see you in the next video, or hopefully I'll see you over on Twitch, where currently, as I said, I'm streaming Dauntless, I'm streaming Heroes of the Storm. Come over, say hi. If you have any questions, I'm be glad to answer them. If you might be curious as to my build that you can see in the B-roll, again, you can find it on my Twitch channel. Have a nice day, and I'll see you out there, hunters.